Yo, what is up, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another video. I was just recording a video about the Brooklyn Nets that you will see at some point, but for right now, it's not coming up today because we need to talk about the trade that just went down. As I was recording that video, I looked over at my phone for a second because I noticed my Twitter notifications were blowing up. And I was like, it's around the trade deadline. A trade probably went down. And part of me was thinking, oh, shoot, does this involve the Thunder? Because maybe people are tweeting at me. No. The Trailblazers and Clippers have made a trade, and it is a disgusting one for the Portland Trailblazers, and such a good one for the Clippers, unfortunately, as someone who wants to see the Clippers lose to get a better first-round pick. Whatever. Let's go over the trade. The Clippers are trading Eric Bledsoe, Justice Winslow, and Keon Johnson, as well as a future second-round pick to the Portland Trailblazers for Norman Powell and Robert Covington. So, the Blazers give up Norman Powell, who's one of their best players, and Robert Covington, a decent role player, for Eric Bledsoe, who is just salary at this point, Justice Winslow, who doesn't play that much for the Clippers, and Keon Johnson, who is a young guy, but, you know, he's not like a top prospect or anything, and a second-round pick. If you remember, the Blazers gave up Gary Trent Jr. for Norman Powell at last year's trade deadline. Gary Trent Jr. has scored 30 or more points in his last, I think, 5 of his last 6 games. So they gave up him to get Norman Powell to, you know, try and be more of a winner. They went out and they did not do any winning. And then now they've given up that same guy, Norman Powell, that they traded Gary Trent Jr. for. They threw him in a trade alongside Robert Covington, who, if you remember, they traded 2 first-round picks a couple years back to get Robert Covington on this team. So if we go over the whole lineage of this thing, they traded Gary Trent Jr. and 2 first-round picks for Eric Bledsoe, Justice Winslow, Keon Johnson, and a second-round pick. It's a disaster class by the Portland Trailblazers management. That is terrible. It's like the opposite of when you flip assets for, like, if you ever watch like a 2K rebuild video, they like flip assets, they like trade guys for picks. This is the exact opposite. This is one of the worst trade. I already didn't like the Gary Trent Jr. trade when it went down for the Portland Trailblazers because I've always been super high on Gary Trent Jr. and he's been hooping this season. So already I was not a fan of it. This just makes it even worse. And I don't know how you can justify that you're trying to build a winning team around Damian Lillard when you make a trade like this. I understand wanting to get off of Norman Powell's money. It makes sense. You want to give Anthony Simons more opportunities? Sure, that makes sense. But there had to have been something better out there. There's no way that this is what you did. And you throw in a guy in Robert Covington who you gave up 2 picks for. You couldn't get a first somehow? This is embarrassing. This is a terrible trade for them. I don't know what the game plan is. Sure, they had to get rid of salary. Sure, it saves them a ton of money, whatever. But you have Damian Lillard, who you already, you say you're trying to build a team around. This is not doing that. And when you combine that with the trade that they made last season, I hate it. Now, on the flip side of things, I also hate it because as a Thunder fan, I need the Clippers to be bad because we have their first-round pick this year. And now this Clippers team, when they get fully healthy, they're unstoppable. This team is so damn good when they get fully healthy. Let's go through their roster. Shout out to my brother Ryan. He tweeted out their roster for me so I can go look through it. I'll put his Twitter in the description below. Also flash the tweet up on the screen so you can see it as well as I read through it. So, the Clippers' potential roster when fully healthy, assuming they don't make any more moves, and I could definitely see them dealing off like Serge Ibaka to get off some of the money too, so this isn't finalized, but right now this is their roster. Reggie Jackson, Norman Powell, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Marcus Morris, Robert Covington, Luke Kennard, Terrence Mann, Zubac, Serge Ibaka, Nick Batum, Brandon Boston, Amir Coffey. Did you notice how I didn't name a single like less than solid player on that entire team? This team's ridiculous. When they get fully healthy, if Paul George and Kawhi Leonard can come back this season, which I personally don't think they will, I don't think Kawhi can come back, and I don't expect them to rush Paul George back for anything because I think it looks like next year is their year, potentially. This is the championship favorite. Whenever those guys come back, this team is the championship favorite. They are so ridiculously deep. That is what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 guys deep of a rotation. You also add Kawhi Leonard, who's a top 5 player, top 6, whatever you want to say. Paul George, who's a top 15 player, was playing like an MVP candidate over the course of this season before he ended up getting hurt. You have solid role players, Reggie Jackson. Now you bring in Norman Powell to add even more scoring. If they go out and make a trade for like a better point guard, maybe they flip Reggie Jackson, or even if they bring like a backup point guard, this is a ridiculous roster. That's like the one hole they don't have is a great playmaking point guard. That's it. That's all they're missing. Everything else they pretty much have. This is an insanely talented team. And so I love this trade for the Clippers. They get off, none of those guys mattered in the long-term scheme of things for them. Keon Johnson, sure, maybe he can become a pretty solid young player on the Trailblazers with more opportunity. That doesn't matter. They're trying to win a championship. Norman Powell's way better than the two players they traded away. Winslow didn't even get minutes. Eric Bledsoe, sure, he had a great game last night, but he's not the guy you want there. You add in the scoring of Norman Powell, and maybe when fully healthy, they can run out a starting lineup of Reggie Jackson, Norman Powell, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, whoever you want to put the 3 and the 4, and Zubac. That lineup's ridiculous. It's insane what they're going to be able to do when everyone's fully healthy. I'm checking my Twitter notifications because I'm not sure if more trades are going to go down now. It's reached the point where, at this point, trades could go down at any moment. So I'm going to continuously check to make sure that nothing else happens while I'm recording this video. But if I have to give immediate grades to these trades, I guess like it's not the worst when you just... Okay, it is bad. It is pretty bad when I think about the Trailblazer side of things. It's just so much worse when you consider what they gave up to get those two pieces that they dealt away. It's so bad. And like, this isn't even just me as a Thunder fan, like hating the Blazers or anything, because I'm sure some people are going to try and say that. There are a ton. I tweeted out that the Blazers trade Gary Trent Jr. for Norman Powell to flip him a year later for this package. And there are Blazers fans that are so upset in my comment section. There are Blazers fans quoting it and say we're like the laughing stock of the league at this point. Nobody in the Blazers fandom is happy with this trade. So if you're a Blazers fan that's mad at me for saying this stuff, go talk to the other Blazers fans. This trade is bad for them. I hate it from their perspective. They need to blow it up. They should have blown it up already, and they could have kept Gary Trent Jr. But now, at this point, how do you build a team around Damian Lillard with what you have going on? What do you do? Unless you trade McCollum for someone better, and even then it's like Dame, and say you trade McCollum for like a Ben Simmons or something, it's like Dame and Simmons, and then you put pieces around them, maybe that's something like you can try to do. But I don't know. Like, it kind of made sense last year when they trade Trent for Norman Powell because you're trying to win, and at that point he was better. But at this point, Gary Trent Jr. is kind of close to him, especially when you factor in the defensive side of things. They botched it. They screwed it up. So, yeah, this is bad from the Blazers standpoint. This is our first big trade of the trade deadline. I'm going to do more of these reaction videos when trades drop. Probably going to do a live stream during the trade deadline as well. So if you want to see that, make sure you subscribe, make sure you like the video. Comment down below your immediate grades. If I had to grade it from the Clippers perspective, I'll give it like an A-. I'll give it an A. I'll just give it an A. And from the Blazers perspective, I guess you get off money. It's like a D plus. Maybe I'll be generous. I don't really know. Just doesn't look good from the perspective of of the Portland Trailblazers. So let me know what you grade the trade in the comment section below. If you're a Blazers or a Clippers fan, let me know what you're thinking about all this, because this is kind of crazy that it just came out of nowhere. I appreciate y'all watching. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe. I'll see y'all later for more trade reactions. Real one, say back.